Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about a really interesting incident that's taken place off the coastline of the United Kingdom. An oil tanker flying under the United States flag and manned by US operatives was carrying 220,000 barrels of jet fuel destined for the US Navy. And this ship was stationary. It was anchored, so it wasn't going anywhere. And out of the blue, it was rammed by a cargo ship that was flying under a Portuguese flag. And interestingly, the captain of that cargo ship was Russian, and he's now been arrested.
So Long has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning. Vessel Stena Immaculate is carrying Jet A1 fuel, which is on fire and in the water.
It is unusual that this accident happened because the Stena vessel, full of aviation fuel, was at anchor. And the Portuguese vessel, the So Long, basically powered into her. Now, there were reports of fog earlier, but modern ships have anti-collision systems, they have radar and so on. The Stena ship could have done very little about it. It couldn't have moved away because it was at anchor. I wouldn't have had time to respond by the time it got its engines warmed up and everything else. But the So Long should have avoided it. There is no reason why in the 21st century two ships should collide.
So initially it was assumed that this was a simple accident, that something had gone wrong on the So Long, that they'd lost control of the vessel somehow. Maybe they'd put it on autopilot and didn't realise that it was going to go onto a collision course with the US tanker. However, as I mentioned earlier, the captain of the vessel is a 59-year-old Russian, and it turns out that the crew that was manning the So Long was a mixture of Russians and Filipinos. And he's now been arrested and charged with manslaughter because one person from his vessel actually died. Well, they're unaccounted for. They haven't been found yet, but it's assumed that they've either drowned or died as part of the collision. Now, no details have been released yet as to what happened, why that So Long vessel continued driving straight into the US tanker that was carrying all of this jet fuel. But obviously it throws up the question as to what's going on geopolitically, because obviously at the moment there is a lot going on. Now, over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, the US and the Russians have actually become much closer because Donald Trump has set out his plan for peace in Ukraine, and that plan revolves around Russia and Ukraine coming around the table and agreeing some form of ceasefire based on where everybody is right now. So Russia is likely to be given the 20% of Ukraine that it's currently occupying. So theoretically, that should actually be a positive outcome from Russia's perspective. However, there are a lot of questions as to whether or not that ceasefire will ever be agreed. Will Ukraine sign off on it? Will Europe be happy to just walk away from the conflict that's been going on for more than 3 years? And will the USA continue supporting Ukraine and Europe if the ceasefire isn't agreed, or are they going to just withdraw all of their aid permanently and leave Europe to its own devices? So there's a lot of things going on right now. And a Russian captain of a ship ploughing into a tanker containing 220,000 barrels of jet fuel for the US Navy does raise a big question as to whether or not this was a deliberate act. Now, as it stands at the moment, there is no evidence to prove that the captain deliberately rammed the US vessel, and that remains a question to be answered. However, I think it's a really interesting point in time that this has happened because it really reminds us just how fragile the whole world peace situation is. Because if the US does decide that this was a deliberate act, that the Russian captain then decided he wanted to take down the American vessel, the question is, was he acting alone, or was this some sort of planned defense aggressive strategy put together by Russia? And if that was the case, then there is a genuine risk that the USA would either want to retaliate or want some form of apology or explanation from the Kremlin. And as we know historically, that's probably not very likely to happen in terms of Russia saying, we didn't do it, it wasn't us, we're really sorry. It's probably just going to be a complete denial. But I wanted to post this video because I think it's an interesting development. Whether or not it was just a genuine accident or something more sinister, it just raises the security issues that are going on around the world at the moment. And I think everything is really on a knife edge at the moment. All it takes is a couple of small incidents that could grow and mushroom to cause bigger problems, and we could be looking at some sort of serious standoff not just in terms of what's going on in Ukraine, but globally. We've got two mega powers. We've got the Americans, we've got Russia, we've got China, we've got lots of other countries who are rattling sabres at the moment and threatening to do all sorts of things. And I think everybody just needs to calm down a little bit, and hopefully it will be proved that this was just a pure accident, that the captain of that ship was asleep or something along those lines, that nobody was really paying any attention to where the ship was going, and then all of a sudden it accidentally hit this US vessel. But the fact that we've got a Russian and an American incident here does raise some issues, does raise concerns, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of it. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, found it useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.